Section 1. The Cosmic Joke, Humanity's Humiliation. Part of, we were the galaxy's punchline, now we're its final word. The moment humanity stepped into the wider galactic stage, we were filled with awe, ambition, and hope. Our homeworld, Earth, had weathered millennia of war, disaster, and self-destruction, but we'd finally overcome enough of our chaos to break through the light barrier and join the stars. We thought the galaxy would welcome us like long-lost siblings. We had stories, songs, pain, resilience. Surely that would mean something. It didn't. To them, the galactic elite, the elder races, the ancient empires, we were nothing more than a new source of amusement. A late-blooming species that crawled out of its gravity well like a curious rodent stumbling into a banquet hall. Our first delegation to the Galactic Convergence arrived in a second-hand shuttle cobbled together from repurposed tech and blind ambition. The council chambers, massive, golden, and humming with thought pattern enhancers, burst into laughter as our envoy tried to speak. The translation software failed to recognize half our metaphors. Our ambassador's body odor was labeled a biochemical aggression. Our suit fabrics were considered pre-agricultural. From that moment on, humanity was branded as a joke. We were listed in xenobiological textbooks as a case study in hormonal instability and short-term cognition. Galactic comedians made entire careers out of mocking our historical wars, our crude planetary divisions, our primitive religions. One skit featured a puppet human trying to negotiate peace with an asteroid while accidentally detonating nuclear bombs on its own cities. The laugh tracks echoed across millions of systems. Alien scholars dissected our psychology in public broadcasts. They called our emotions unrefined, our empathy overstimulated, our tendency to cry absurdly self-destructive. Our entertainment was mined for comedy material. Our dramas mocked, our tragedies turned into galactic reality shows. In the top 5 interstellar programs, Earth Fails Weekly ranked second only to Galactic Gladiator Cuisine. The derision wasn't just limited to comedy. We were locked out of important trade alliances and prohibited from accessing the core tech archives. Our research was deemed too primitive. Our diplomacy was ignored or rebuffed. Treaties were signed with us only when it suited them, and often broken without consequence. When we complained, we were accused of being emotionally volatile. When we fought back, we were labeled dangerously irrational. Our people, scattered across the stars as workers, tourists, or dreamers, suffered quiet humiliations. Human workers were paid in obsolete currencies. Our scientists were recruited as interns, never equals. A human child enrolled in a xenoscience academy was ridiculed so viciously that the school had to shut down its empathy regulators for repairs. Even those aliens who sympathized with us often treated us like a pet species, charming but not to be taken seriously. There were darker edges too. Human volunteers were enrolled in harmless experiments by medical conglomerates. Whole villages on frontier colonies were subjected to alien social engineering projects. Unbeknownst to them, a few factions openly discussed whether sterilizing Earth would be a mercy, preventing us from ever becoming a cosmic threat. We were told these were fringe voices, anomalies. But when no one stood up to defend us, we saw the truth. We weren't just the galaxy's joke. We were its punching bag. At first, Earth protested. Our leaders sent formal complaints to the Galactic Council. Our envoys argued for respect, for fair treatment, for inclusion. They were laughed out of session halls. One ambassador was drenched in iridescent pheromones by a juvenile alien noble as part of a prank. Another was accidentally teleported into a refused shoot during a diplomatic summit. These weren't acts of war. They were acts of dismissal, of mockery. And through it all, humanity endured. We watched. We recorded. We remembered. The joke, repeated often enough, stopped being funny. It hardened, burned into our memory like acid on skin. We began compiling the records, every insult, every slight, every skit and academic paper that framed us as lesser. Secret digital archives emerged, first in forums, then in data vaults, storing the galaxy's mockery in crystal clarity. But we didn't lash out, not yet. Instead, Earth turned inward. Quietly. Methodically. No more interstellar broadcasts. No more open diplomacy. We called back our people. We stopped sending our tech. Our communication satellites were shut down one by one. The galaxy assumed we'd given up. "They're sulking," the networks said with mirth. The monkeys got offended. But behind the silence, a fire was growing. You see, we never wanted to be feared. Not at first. We only wanted to be seen. But since they refused to see us as anything but a joke, they gave us something stronger than attention. They gave us purpose. They laughed at us. And we let them. Because one day, the punchline would belong to us. And on that day, no one would laugh again. Section 2. From the Ashes of Shame, Humanity Reforged. Part of, we were the galaxy's punchline, now we're its final word. After the laughter faded, after the stage lights dimmed, and the galactic comedians moved on to new material, Earth disappeared. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. One cycle, humanity was there, stumbling through interstellar diplomacy, fumbling at alien interfaces, enduring endless ridicule. The next cycle, we weren't. Communication slowed. Human embassies quietly shut their doors. Ships bearing Earth's flags returned home and didn't come back. Our planet severed trade links, blocked sensor scans, and rejected entry permits with simple, silent denials. The galaxy barely noticed. The consensus among the elder races was that humanity had finally accepted its station. Some said we were embarrassed, licking our wounds. Others assumed we had collapsed under the pressure of progress, our primitive social structure folding in on itself like a dying star. A few thought we'd wiped ourselves out, another cautionary tale for emotional species attempting to join the stars too early. But Earth hadn't fallen. Earth was changing. In the silence, something radical stirred. For the first time in history, humans weren't fighting each other. The divisions that had defined us, nations, races, creeds, blurred under a single, unifying truth. We were a joke to the galaxy. Our pride had been shattered, not by war, but by mockery. And the only way forward was together. This wasn't about vengeance, not yet. It was about worth, about reclaiming the dignity they had stolen from us. What began as anger turned into ambition. Scientists, military strategists, artists, and philosophers gathered not to wage war, but to forge identity. There were no official declarations, no government mandates. Instead, there was a movement, Project Final Word Star. A collective understanding that humanity would rise again, not as victims seeking pity, but as architects of their own destiny. And so began the reforging. Earth's academies stopped publishing to the galactic networks. Instead, they redirected all resources inward. Science was no longer about catching up, it was about leaping ahead. We took what scraps the galaxy had mocked us for not understanding and broke them down to their fundamental truths. Then we rebuilt, reimagined, refined. What the galaxy didn't realize was that while they laughed at our crude tech, they had also shown us the blueprints of everything we needed to surpass them. We learned not just from what they taught us, but from what they assumed we wouldn't understand. They flaunted their gravity engines. We reverse-engineered and miniaturized them. They mocked our biology. We restructured it. Through gene therapy, biomechanical enhancements, and quantum symbiosis, we began reshaping ourselves into something more than human. Our thinkers invented logic systems that alien AIs couldn't comprehend. Recursive emotional encoding, chaos stream reasoning, intuitive programming. Our war planners developed military models where strategies weren't pre-planned, but emerged organically from ever-adapting logic clouds. But it wasn't just science. Our culture transformed too. The arts of Earth, once considered primitive emotional discharge by alien critics, became weapons of their own. Our music developed subharmonics that disturbed psionic sensors. Our literature encoded mathematical truths in metaphor. Our theater carried layered meaning that even the most advanced translation matrices failed to parse. Each song, each story, each sculpture carried pain and power, a pulse of memory and meaning that hit deeper than any weapon. Philosophers created new frameworks, systems of thought rooted in human suffering and rebirth. From this came the Terran doctrine. Asterisk respect all. Mock none. Forget nothing. Asterisk it became a mantra, whispered by the engineers forging deep void warforms, etched into the neural implants of psychospies, carved into the foundation stones of every new Terran base. Then came the ships. No sleek chrome. No flamboyant designs. These were obsidian juggernauts, faceless, wordless, terrifying. The Vanguard fleet had no call signs, no identifying symbols beyond a single emblem, a shattered globe, wreathed in fire, with a black line drawn across it, asterisk enough star. The galaxy first noticed them at the edge of the Maelstrom Rift, patrolling space where no trade routes passed. Observers assumed they were mining craft. Then alien scouts went missing. Then entire systems, once chaotic or pirate-infested, suddenly fell silent. No battles. No wreckage. Just absence. Followed by a single transmission. Terran jurisdiction confirmed. No further conflict necessary. Still, the galaxy didn't panic.
Not yet.
The mocking continued, but quieter now, tinged with a nervous chuckle. A viral holovid leaked from deep space. It showed a human ship approaching an alien warfleet. A voice asked, "What do you want, Terran?" The human captain didn't answer. Instead, he uploaded a data packet. The video ended. The alien fleet scattered within hours. The rest of the galaxy never learned what was in the file. But the fear began to spread. The reclusive humans, the emotional primitives, the punchline of 1,000 galactic jokes, had returned. But not in the way anyone expected. They didn't send ambassadors. They didn't issue demands. They just watched. Black ships hovered over disputed planets and ancient battlegrounds. They didn't interfere, unless provoked. Then they moved with surgical efficiency. No survivors. No remains. Just silence. Alien civilizations tried to investigate. They sent spies and diplomats. None returned. Some reported strange dreams. Others saw human faces in their data feeds, whispering things only they could hear. Humanity had become something else. Not invaders. Not conquerors. A presence. A reckoning. And still, Earth remained silent. No declarations of war. No calls for justice. Because humanity was waiting. Waiting for the galaxy to realize. We remembered. We rebuilt. And we had become the final word to every sentence they thought they could write about us. Section 3. Echoes of Fire. The Galactic Reckoning. Part of, we were the galaxy's punchline. Now we're its final word. The first official strike was so subtle that many didn't even recognize it as an attack. The Luxa Broadcast Nexus, a massive galactic relay responsible for distributing entertainment to nearly half the Orion arm, went offline without warning. No explosions. No debris. No warning signals. One moment, billions of beings were laughing at a rerun of primitive Earth diplomacy, a comedy of errors, and the next, silence. Emergency repair fleets were dispatched. They found the station still physically intact, floating in a state of eerie stillness. The data cores were melted from the inside out by a process no one recognized. The only thing left was a symbol burned onto the main relay panel, a black circle with a single white line crossing it, the emblem of Terran retribution. The message was clear to anyone paying attention. Asterisk, we hear you. Now you'll hear us. Asterisk. At first, the galaxy hesitated to connect the incident to humanity. Some suggested rogue factions or internal sabotage. But then came the next event, far more public. The Galactic Council convened in the Prime Chamber to address the increasing incidents of unexplained station failures and planetary disruptions. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered, expecting a routine session. Instead, a ripple passed through the chamber as a human envoy entered through the central aisle. Uninvited, unannounced, unapologetic. The last time a Terran diplomat had stood in that chamber, they'd been laughed off the floor. This time, no one dared interrupt. The human wore no armor. No visible weapons. Only a matte black uniform with the same now familiar white line across the chest. He placed a single data shard on the council podium and spoke calmly. "You laughed," he said. "We listened. Now it's your turn." With a flick, the shard activated. It projected hundreds of recorded transmissions, clips, and documents, decades of mockery, abuse, experiments, and slander. It showed the puppet shows, the humiliations, the scientific ridicule, the educational dissections of human psychology by smug xenoscholars. Then it showed the other half. Human faces stoic, watching, quietly enduring, building, learning. The Terran envoy looked around the hall once more. "We're not here to ask for an apology. We're here to make sure you never make the same mistake again." And then he left. He didn't need to stay. The message had been delivered. In the days that followed, the true campaign began, not one of open war, but of overwhelming control. Entire planetary systems lost access to their navigational satellites. Trade routes collapsed as Terran interference disrupted hyperspace stabilizers. Economies shattered overnight. Not through invasion or conquest, but because the infrastructure every empire relied on had, without their knowledge, become dependent on Terran-run systems. The humans had learned from being sidelined. They had studied, adapted, and inserted themselves like a virus into every galactic mechanism. Now they flipped the switch. AI networks began glitching, refusing to process commands unless given in Terran logic protocols. Power grids fell under the control of remote ghost code that only answered to Earth-coded signals. Communications were rerouted through Terran-controlled relay buoys. Cultures that had mocked humanity suddenly found themselves whispering human phrases just to get their doors open. And then came the cultural wave. Terran stories, music, and language began appearing across the stars, not distributed by force, but consumed by need. Galactic networks began broadcasting human-made content because it was the only reliable programming left. Alien children began mimicking human speech. Entire alien subcultures emerged devoted to Terran philosophy and aesthetics. Former comedians who'd once made fortunes mocking Earth were now issuing public apologies or disappearing altogether. One popular alien personality, a Thrixian mimic comedian, performed a final tribute to humanity. It ended with him weeping on stage before detonating a regret bomb, wiping his own memory. Even the great empires began to fall, not with explosions or bloodshed, but with quiet surrenders. The Arkari hegemony, once dismissive of Earth as a minor mammalian aberration, collapsed within days after their leadership AI refused to process non-Terran directives. The Viren ascendancy, known for its brutal dominance of frontier worlds, simply stopped expanding after dozens of their elite soldiers turned up dead in their sleep, killed by what forensic bots called symbolic retaliation. Everywhere the Terran shadow stretched, old powers faltered. Not because humans waged traditional war, but because they never needed to. They had mastered the galaxy's rules, then rewrote them. No demands. No fleets. Just control. Surgical, absolute. Terrifying control. And still, Earth never sent out a single declaration of war. They didn't need to raise their voices. The galaxy had already learned to listen. Now, where once human diplomats had been laughed at, they were feared. Not because they shouted, but because they didn't have to. Every word was precise. Every move deliberate. Humanity was no longer a part of the galactic hierarchy. They were the hierarchy. On one border planet, a governor once known for playing Earth Screech parodies during his campaigns was found locked in his mansion. On every wall, written in his own blood, were the words, "They remember everything." And they did, because humanity had waited. Waited through the mockery, through the shame, through the silence, not to destroy the galaxy, but to change it forever, with whispers instead of roars, with precision instead of rage, with fire, yes, but fire shaped into a scalpel, not a torch. They had become the reckoning. The joke had ended, and the final word was now theirs. Section 4. The final word, legacy etched in stars. Part of We were the galaxy's punchline. Now we're its final word. By the time the galactic community realized it, Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a symbol, a law, a gravity well of culture, policy, and power that no species dared to defy. Humanity hadn't merely responded to the mockery. They had transcended it. They had reshaped the very language of civilization across thousands of systems, not through war, but through mastery, memory, and relentless evolution. And now, where once they were jeered, they stood as judges. The Terran Code had replaced the fractured, often contradictory laws of the Galactic Council. Written in the ashes of humiliation and forged in the steel of intention, it became the foundation of what was now known as the Accord of Final Words. This charter, built not on conquest but on consequence, demanded respect between all species. No ridicule. No systemic mockery. No biological chauvinism. All violations carried the same warning etched into the opening page. Asterisk, we remember. We respond. Asterisk. Alien civilizations, once proud and arrogant, now made pilgrimages to Earth, not out of obligation, but reverence. The planet had transformed into the galactic capital of consequence. Where once humans had begged for attention, they now granted it. Sparingly, intentionally. Earth's capital, solemn, became the seat of interstellar judgment. Here, conflicts were resolved not with fleets, but with history. The Chamber of Echoes, a monolithic court chamber surrounded by projection halls, was where those accused of cultural aggression were brought to account. Trials were held with full transparency. The accused were shown the weight of their words, their actions, their dismissals. But Earth's rise didn't come with arrogance. That was the difference. Humanity never sought revenge for revenge's sake. They could have scorched the stars in fire and fury, but they didn't. Instead, they chose the harder path, transformation. Under the Terran Accord, Earth created the Institutes of Empathic Legacy, spread across several systems. These weren't schools, they were crucibles. Species once guilty of mocking others were sent here not to be punished, but to learn. Through immersion in humanity's stories, its tragedies, comedies, and triumphs, former mockers emerged with a deeper understanding of pain, perseverance, and mutual dignity. Entire alien generations grew up studying Terran history like sacred scripture. The Battle of Silence. The Age of Reflection. The Shroud Years. These weren't just human milestones, they were now galactic myths, retold in songs, holograms, and even rituals. Children across the stars wore Terran pendants with a sigil of the broken globe and white slash, symbols of humility, pain, and transcendence. Human literature became mandatory reading in elite academies. Shakespeare, Baldwin, Morrison, Sagan, and so many others found new life in alien tongues. Artifacts once ridiculed, like Earth's paintings, its ancient vinyl records, even its chaotic street art, were now preserved in the Vault of Voices on Eric's Prime, guarded by a multi-species coalition as cultural treasures too powerful to be lost. In the arts, Terran influence was total. Galactic orchestras performed symphonies rooted in Earth's ancient folk songs. Dancers in distant solar systems incorporated Terran motion codes into their performances. Human poetic form became the framework for the largest AI-composed epics across 4 spiral arms. Yet, even in dominance, humanity remained wary. They knew how quickly power could corrupt. They had lived the other side of the story, the side where arrogance disguised itself as satire. To prevent that cycle, Earth formed the Council of Mirrors, an independent body composed of non-human species tasked with keeping Terran influence accountable. And still, across all corners of the galaxy, one structure stood out above all others. The Hall of Laughter. Built on Earth's surface in the ruins of the old United Nations complex, the hall was not a celebration, but a memorial. It held archives of every insult, every clip, every humiliation humanity had endured. Visitors walked through its echoing chambers in silence, watching projections of ancient talk shows, alien lectures dissecting the inferior mind of man, and propaganda broadcasts mocking Earth's pain. At the very end of the hall stood a statue, a simple bronze figure of a man, hunched, holding a scroll. His face is weary, but his eyes are alive. Beneath it, the inscription reads, "We were the galaxy's punchline." Now, we are its final word. It became tradition for alien ambassadors to leave something at the statue's feet: gifts, messages, old flags of shameful eras. A quiet, universal recognition we see now. We understand. Even centuries later, long after the original Terran leaders had passed into history, the legacy endured. In distant space, a new species called the Jalari emerged from their homeworld with the early signs of interstellar travel. They were ambitious, loud, and raw, much like humanity once was. And when they entered the galactic stage, unsure and defiant, they were met not with laughter, but with guidance. The first emissary sent to them was a human. She bore no weapons, only stories. She spoke to the Jalari Council with a calm voice and showed them a simple video: Earth's first contact, and how they were mocked. The Jalari wept. They understood. This time there was no joke, only shared understanding. The galaxy had changed, and at the center of it all, Earth remained. Silent, watchful, not as a conqueror, not even as a ruler, but as a reminder that even the most forgotten can rise, that memory is mightier than missiles, and that the final word does not belong to the strongest nor the loudest, but to those who endure, learn, and speak with truth. The stars may shift, civilizations may fall, but etched in starlight, across every system touched by human legacy, 5 words remained. Laugh if you must. Remember us.